sibling, you know the way that siblings love each other. Most of the time, they begrudgingly like one another. You still love them, but it's not the same way you love your friends. Now, could you imagine marrying your sibling? Today, this is wrong and in many locations, illegal. However, in ancient Greek mythology, this occurred constantly. Greek mythology is a subject that is interesting for many people. I am credible in this topic because of the amount of research I have put into Greek mythology. In this speech, I will talk about the different myths and stories that the Greeks created in order to explain things that were beyond their understanding during the time. I will talk about the Titans' Age, the end of the Titans' Age, and the Olympians. The Titans were not the first godly beings that are part of the Greek mythology. However, they are the beginning of a large group of beings that led to who the Greeks primarily worshipped, the Olympians. The Titans were a group of godlike beings that were worshipped. There were many different female Titans. However, the most important female Titan was Rhea, wife of Kronos. According to the Routledge Handbook of Greek Mythology, Kronos was the ruler of the Titans. He chose his sister Rhea as his wife. Rhea gave birth to 6 children. Rhea can often be seen as a motherly figure due to her children. In myths involving her, she is represented as a caring towards others. There are many myths that surround Rhea besides her role in the rise of the Olympians. She was often sent to calm down other gods. There were 6 Titan brothers. However, Kronos is the most famous of them all. He is the youngest and was the most brave when needed. Kronos was afraid of a prophecy that was set by his father. His father said that he would fall by the hands of his own children. Due to his paranoia, this happened exactly as foretold. According to the Routledge Handbook of Greek Mythology, there are many stories that Kronos was a part of. One of these stories involves the creation of the Centaurs. It is believed that Kronos fathered the Centaurs with Philyra, an ocean nymph. Philyra turned into a horse to try to escape from him. He chased after her, and they had a baby after this encounter. However, the Titans were not rulers for long. The Olympians were born, thus taking the power of Kronos and all the Titans that stood with him. The Titans were overthrown by their own family, the future Olympians. According to the book, The Gods of the Greek, Kronos married Rhea and they started a family. For Rhea, this was something she had wanted her whole life. However, Kronos was reminded of a prophecy that his father proclaimed. In order to prevent his children from overthrowing him, Kronos did the most illogical thing possible. He swallowed each child shortly after birth. After Hestia was swallowed, Kronos and Rhea had more children: Hades, Demeter, Poseidon, Hera, and Zeus. After Hera had been swallowed by her father, Rhea decided that she could no longer live with how Kronos was treating their children. She devised a plan to protect their next child from Kronos. For the next child, Zeus, Rhea went to the island of Crete in order to give birth. Here she hid her baby in a cave from Kronos. Instead of a baby, Kronos was given a rock and a blanket to swallow. After Kronos had swallowed the baby, Zeus grew to be a strong man. In order for him to save his siblings, he caused his father to puke up all the other kids. After the return of his siblings, Zeus quickly started to plan a way for the gods to overthrow Kronos. After the Titans were overthrown, the gods ruled over the world. According to the book Greek Gods and Heroes for young readers, the gods and goddesses were a major part in the myths that Greek people told. There were many different gods and goddesses in Greek mythology. The goddesses were a major part of the legends. There is one goddess who I think is the most important to discuss: Hera. Hera was a very gentle person. Unfortunately, she caught Zeus's eye. Zeus begged her to marry him every year for 300 years. Each time he asked, she refused. Zeus used tricks to eventually get her to marry him. He turned himself into a bird and flew into Hera's room during a storm. Hera protected the bird, and eventually she told the bird she loved him. At this point, Zeus transformed back into himself. He told her she had to marry him because she professed her love. While the goddesses of Greek mythology were impressive, the gods of Greek mythology were far more violent. According to the Routledge Handbook of Greek Mythology, there was one god who is probably seen as the most important: Zeus. Now, Zeus has a million different myths that surround him, since he was the king of the gods. However, one of his many issues was adultery. Even after he married Hera, he would take many different lovers. With these different lovers, he had many different illegitimate children. For most of these encounters, Zeus's advances were not welcomed by the women. Overall, the Titans were a strong group of 12 siblings who overthrew their father. They also created the next generation of godlike creatures, the Olympians. In order for the Olympians to rule, they had to overthrow their father. After this, the gods lived their life and brought peace to Greece. The Greek gods were tales that were told in order to explain the unknown. After all, the unknown can be the scariest thing to live with.